GameCast Continuum. Welcome everybody to GameCast Continuum. We are your hosts, DC Skater Shane and
Mr. Bojangles, 1984.
On this week's exciting episode, we will be discussing Fallout. But before we get into that, we're going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure to check out our Twitter page and follow us over at GC Continuum. If you're listening to this on Podbean or iTunes and want to see us do the show live, you can find us over at twitch.tv/GameCastContinuum, as well as on YouTube. Just search GameCast Continuum.
Yeah, you won't necessarily see it live, but the video version will be up there for you.
True. Video version over on YouTube. Check it out and enjoy.
Yes.
Moving on. This week, though, we are going to start the game we decided that we got picked was Fallout, the original game. Or the original, I should say.
Yes. Good old Fallout. Where it all began.
Which, I mean, I didn't really look into it too much. I mean, I never played the original. I never really played any of them. But it was neat to see where it began. I mean, starting off really with that one, they're all kind of in that same post-apocalyptic scenario for all of them. But this one started taking place kind of between World War II and the beginning of the Apollo program. It kind of deviated from our own timeline, but
yeah, a lot of games do that. They set it within a certain time frame, but alter the events that take place. I mean, makes sense.
But I mean, with this one, you start off, I mean, as with every Fallout, but you start off in a vault, which I guess that's kind of like more or less Fallout shelters would be hence the name Fallout.
Yeah.
But I mean, you start off at Vault 13, and I guess the water chip malfunctioned from my understanding, and you're kind of on a timeline. You get 150 days before you're out of water, which that's a hell of a way to go.
Yeah, that's certainly not ideal.
And
we're talking about a post-nuclear landscape, and I'm sure that is something that would happen, is the water supply would run low eventually.
Well, now I mean, with technology now, though, I'm sure it's a lot better. But back then, especially, you're heavily reliant on those machines.
Yeah, I mean, the game came out in '97.
But you started off. Everybody, all your normal people in the vault were considered vault dwellers. And then you had the vault overseer, who's, I guess, in charge of everything, kind of. He basically comes up to you and tells you that it's your job to go find a replacement. So get out into the world and find it, essentially.
Which, I mean, this is a very important role that they give you in order to ensure the, the safety
of everybody.
Safety, but to ensure that they stay alive with enough water. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but there had to have been other people in that vault who were much better suited to do the job, I would assume.
No, come on.
But starting from there, he gives you the quest to go out into the world, and that's initially the premise of the game: is go out, find the water chip, which to me doesn't sound overly exciting.
Well, but I mean, every game has that, where you're playing as the main character, and your objective is to go find this one particular thing, or go save this one particular princess. I mean,
yeah, I guess
it's not like it's a concept that's never been used before.
No, true. As they send you out into the world, though, you come across the first vault, which is Vault 15, which Obviously, when you see that first vault, it's not going to be that easy. You get there, it's collapsed, and it was abandoned. So that's a shocker. You know, they're not going to be like, well, go out and find it. Here's your first vault you find, and there it is. No,
of course
not a chance.
Why would they do that when they could have you then go to vault number 12, which has a water chip? And I guess that's where you find it, according to the research we have here. Like, the water chip was able to be procured from vault number 12. By the time you go back and save the people in your vault, that's when you get your actual quest.
Yeah, because I think as you were going, from vault 15 to vault 12 and so forth, you do go underground at one point. I found, the necropolis, and the vault overseer found out about that, and here's, all these reports of large mutated people. And I mean, you saw them firsthand earlier on, so you already know the threat. Right. And now he wants you to find out where they're coming from and stop them.
Yeah, and these vaults and stuff, I mean, they're all in or around this place called Junktown, which is it's like the main area of the game. So you have to try and protect that from these mutated humans, so to speak, that are coming from the necropolis. So at least it's a better mission. It's not like, hey, just go find this water chip and come back. It's now we need to protect our land, now that we know that the people that are in the vaults aren't going to die of thirst.
Right. I mean, at least, sort of side mission type thing one's taken care of. But, from then, after he gives you the daunting task of finding where they are and stopping them, you end up finding sort of this cult called the Children of the Cathedral, and it's a front for the Master, who's basically using the children and the people in that cult to spread the word and get people to join him without being, not forcefully, basically just getting people to willingly join up on his, I'll call it crusade, if you will.
Okay.
Which, using children to get mutants, all right.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. And I mean, as you're playing through the game, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember much about it. I haven't had much time in the game, so I don't really exactly remember why children were being used and things of that nature. But
because they're non-threatening.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess. People typically let their guard down when there's children involved. So.
Well, look at all the advertising that they have nowadays that have children on it to get you to go buy crap or whatever. They're non-threatening people. They're like, oh, children are fine using it. Let's let anybody else use it.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm not really a psychological kind of guy.
I mean, it's definitely a lot better to advertise using children than having a bunch of bikers.
Yeah, you're right there. That's for sure. But yeah, I guess as you go along, of course, I mean, like other games do as well. I mean, the main character has to disguise themselves, so you end up disguising yourself as one of these children to gain entry to the Master's headquarters, so to speak, so you can try and take them down. After you infiltrate the base, you actually find out that these mutated humans were using this forced evolutionary virus that the Master had cooked up. And
can I just say,
one giving it to them to create his army.
That is the least creative name for a virus thing to help mutate people. The forced evolutionary virus. Jesus
Christ! They could have just called it super serum.
Fair enough,
right? I mean, what does Captain America? What do the scientists use to make Captain America? Don't they just call it like super serum?
Yeah, that's fair.
So, There's that.
There
There's
is
only
that.
so creative that you can get with naming these things. I mean, because if you start trying to get too creative, you're going to make a name that is just unrecognizable to the people that are going to be playing it.
That's true. But after you find where he was using his virus, if you will, to create the humans, you kill him. You end up killing him first, and then you go in and destroy the base, essentially making it that there will be no more superhumans. As per pretty much any game, you end up saving the day. But your reward for saving the day is you get exiled. You get back, and the Overseer fears that hero worship could cause other people in the vault to leave. So
Yeah.
he says for the greater good that you're getting exiled into the wasteland. So first off, we get your water chip. You allow them to live. Then you wipe out the threat. Now get the hell out.
Yeah, that's pretty great, huh?
Is kind of what they're giving you, which...
I mean, in a way, I can understand where the Overseer is coming from, because you got sent out there, you managed to make it through all of the hardships on your own, and you take down this whole empire that the Master built with these superhuman warriors that he created, and then you return like nothing even happened. So in a way, it would make other people think that it's okay to just leave the vault. There's no threats out there, and then next thing you know,
fair.
You have like 2 people left because everybody else went out and just never came back. But to exile the guy, I mean, at least have the main character give a speech, like, oh yeah, I went out and did this, but you don't want to go out there, and just because he's had
instead of just all right, pack your shit and go.
Yeah, exactly. Just give him some time to explain what he had to go through and why other people shouldn't put themselves through that, and maybe have him vow to never do it again. Like, I'll never go back out there alone. I don't know. I didn't design the game. I just did the research.
But I mean, one thing that I do think is kind of neat about Fallout, or at least this Fallout from what I was reading, though, is you're actually on an actual like timer system. Most games don't really give you a lot of timer stuff. This gave you, from right off the bat, you had 150 days, I believe it was, to get the water chip. And if you didn't do that, you lost. And I guess in earlier versions too, if you didn't destroy the Master and his base within 500 days, the mutants found it and invade, and you lose. Yep. And then I believe it was around when you found Vault 15, when it was collapsed, you actually found the settlers from that somewhere else, and they had an option to hire a water caravan to make, in theory, to make the water easier to get there. But turns out that if you did that, it would go to 400 days, because then the mutant scouts were able to find your vault as well.
Which is smart. That's some good game design right there.
Oh, definitely.
Just the fact that they give you that world clock, or whatever they called it, that starts from 0 and starts counting the moment you leave your vault, I think is really cool. It gives you that sense of, I don't know, it just gives you that sense that you need to get it done. You have a lot of time, but you don't have all the time that you would like these other games that are out now. For instance, we were talking about before we went live, Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, that game, there is a story. You would like to get it completed, but you have as much time as you'd like to get the story missions done and put the puzzle pieces together and complete the game. But with Fallout, kind of similar. I mean, from what I remember, you can go out and explore all the different areas all you wanted to, but if you didn't put the time toward getting the important pieces, and like for instance the water chip, if you didn't get it back to your vault within 150 days, it ran out of water, everybody died, and you lose. So it's really cool that they tie the player down to that time frame a little bit, and that they didn't make it so that it ran out too quickly to make it so that the player felt like it was just an impossible task.
However, that being said, one of the patches for the game and re-released versions of the game actually extended the time limit to 13 years. Okay. So you, instead of having, the 400 days or whatever, you basically had 13 years to do the stuff. And so you could basically play it as you wanted at that point.
Yeah, a lot more time for that exploration and stuff like that. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's kind of neat. I mean, I don't think they would have necessarily had to go that far out with it, take it out to 14 years or 13 years, but...
No. Not that much time.
No.
But then again, I don't necessarily know, and I don't have the scale that I found in the research as far as how many in-game hours there were in a year, like...
Oh, true.
Or how quickly the in-game hours went in relation to actual time. Like, if you're sitting there playing for an hour, is that 1 hour in the game? Or is every 5 minutes an hour in the game that you play? I mean, I don't know.
That makes sense, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little bit gameplay-wise, but I mean... I know you said you had played it a little bit, and from what I saw, combat-wise, like it was a point and click. It seemed like a point and click adventure game almost, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they give you a certain amount of steps that you can take at any given time. If you happen to enter an area, there's an enemy. Like the encounter would start, and then the enemy would try to attack you. You could move a certain amount of spaces before going to make an attack as well. And it was a whole lot of point and click. Almost similar to like the... What Final Fantasy game was it? Final Fantasy Tactics, I want to say?
I think that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very similar to like Final Fantasy Tactics. You can move your character around the board, and then you can, set up your attacks and things like that.
Did it have, I mean, I don't know if you would remember this from playing, but did it have a, like a system where, cause like I saw it was a big square grid, but
yeah,
if you moved like behind an enemy, could you do more, like if you managed to get around them, could you do more damage or anything, or?
I believe it did allow you a bonus if you were behind an enemy, because you were behind their defenses, but I don't remember specifically what that would have been. I think it was just maybe like a 1.5 times multiplier, so you get like 50% more damage, but not 100% on that. But I do believe if you were behind the enemy as well, that when you pull up, because when you click on an enemy to attack them, unless you're using like I think like you had like grenades and similar things like that, so you like explosives. But if you're just trying to shoot with like a single shot weapon, you would select the enemy, and then it would break the enemy down into different sections, like their head, torso, arms, legs, and you could select which part of the body you wanted to attack, and each individual part would have a percentage of success tied to it. Okay. So, I mean, with some enemies, they had rather large heads, so you had like maybe 35% chance to hit, whereas some other enemies it would only be like a 10% chance that you would connect with your attack on the head. And I think when you're behind the enemy, since they couldn't see you and therefore try to dodge or dodge your attacks, it would then allow you...
Your chance went up higher.
Yeah, it allowed you a higher chance of success at that point.
Okay. And actually, too, I mean, from what I saw, as, any RPG, it had, like, the stats and everything are done in they call it their special system, which basically stood for strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck.
Yeah.
And basically with that is it's just like your stats in any game where, you put points into various things to do, to get various activities, essentially. But what I found kind of interesting was the perception stat, because since the battle system was even though it was turn-based in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But it did like a list of turns, and if you had a real high perception stat, it said it allows you to get new turns faster. So in theory, if you built into perception a lot, you could say get 3 or 4 hits before they could get 1 or 2 in.
Yeah, and I wonder how long it took them to come up with that special system, as far as making the acronym something that actually makes sense, like strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. I wonder if they had other things chosen, like instead of strength and perception, maybe strength and I don't know. Well, they do have endurance as well. Shit, I don't know. But just the fact that it's those things and it spells the word special, that must have taken some time to put together.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, moving past that, I mean, we can go a little bit into the development of the game, just because
this is where I have the most fun looking up these games, is finding out what they went through in the development process.
Hey, knock yourself out if you want to dive into it a little bit. I know you found a lot more development stuff than I did, so I mean, yeah, let it go.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we mentioned it at the beginning. I don't really remember. But it was developed and published both by Interplay Entertainment. The budget they had was only around $3 million, which, I mean, in today's standards is not that much. It came out in September of '97, and it was meant to be a sequel to Wasteland, which is another RPG game. But they weren't able to make it an official sequel because at the time, Interplay didn't even have the rights to the Wasteland game. So they couldn't necessarily make a Wasteland Part 2, so they had to come up with a different name. And it went through a few different names before it landed on Fallout, actually. One of them was the GURPS Wasteland.
That just sounds like a terrible game. I mean...
Yeah, but it was named after the system that they were going to use. So before we go into the names that the game could have had, it would be good to go into the fact that they were going to use this system, the GURPS system, which stands for the Generic Universal Role-Playing System. It was actually developed by Steve Jackson Games. And depending on who you ask or who you talk to, you may come up with a couple of different reasons why Interplay didn't end up using the GURPS system. According to IGN, it was because the Steve Jackson Games company didn't really care for the amount of violence and gore that Interplay was looking to include into Fallout. Yeah, so they didn't like the way that the game was going and the content inside of it. So, according to IGN, Steve Jackson Games told Interplay, well, if this is how your game's going to be, then we don't want our system to be in it, because we don't want to be represented in that kind of a game. However, I guess, representatives from Steve Jackson Games said it was a decision that Interplay made on their own, and didn't really give a reason as to why GURPS wasn't included in the Fallout game. I mean, it just really depends on, like I said, who you ask or who you're getting the information from,
GURPS.
GURPS, yeah. GRPS. These acronyms and shit they come up with just astound me sometimes.
I mean, I'm looking here at the couple different names that that they were possibly going with. And, I mean, well, you had mentioned the whole GURPS Wasteland, which I don't think... That just doesn't sound appealing.
It was just a working title at the time.
And even the second one, Vault 13, a GURPS post-nuclear adventure.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Well, I mean, the full name of the game itself, as it is now, the name Fallout was suggested by the boss of Interplay, Brian Fargo, which I'm glad he
went with Fallout. Yeah.
Yeah, but
just think, we could be playing GURPS 4 now.
Yeah, We very well could have been playing GURPS 4.
For fuck's sake.
But I mean, the full name of Fallout, it isn't just Fallout, it's Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game. That's the actual name of
Which,
Fallout.
that's fine. I mean, that right there tells you what it is, tells you what you're getting into, but you don't go, it doesn't sound, it's appealing to the ear to listen to.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, what are you doing? I'm playing GURPS.
Yeah, I'm playing
Sure.
GURPS Wasteland.
Like,
yeah, what's that game all about?
Yeah. I mean, to get people interested, I mean, I personally, the part that I sort of dove into a little bit that I actually really enjoyed, and I always, this is my favorite part of a lot of games, is where they're like, where they pull in like little Easter eggs and just little inspirations for games.
Yep.
Like, I find that kind of stuff very, very interesting. But before I go into that though too, I mean, I do see here, as we were talking about, all of the GURPS and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I do that is kind of interesting that the entire, after he lost his the GURPS license, that it took only 6 months to create the engine for Fallout.
Yeah, Tim Kaine, he was a big part of Fallout. Actually, he was a director of the game. He was a producer, and also, of course, one of the main programmers, because he built it out, the engine, alone by himself. So
That's impressive.
He created the whole game engine, and he created most of the design in the Fallout game. And once they lost the GURPS license because Steve Jackson Games said no, or Interplay decided not to use it. Yeah, like that's the actual reason. But 6 months time, he put the work in. They didn't give him any more money. They just gave him time to work on it, and he got it done.
Shit.
6 months, made a game engine, and they just kind of kept going from there.
And once the train started rolling, it just kept going. And I mean, that's insane. I mean, I don't know a lot about creating games themselves, but holy damn.
It's been a lot of long days,
to say the least. But you know what, though? I think at the end of that 6 month, once the game comes out, that's got to be, seeing your product out there in general has to be so goddamn rewarding.
Especially after putting that much work into it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not, it became a good game or it flopped, just being able to see your product out on shelves and things like that, that's pretty incredible just in its own right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is with Fallout, and it seems like it's a lot of the Fallouts kind of, they're pulling from, a lot of like the 50s and 60s sci-fi type things, and a lot of, sci-fi and like post-apocalyptic pieces, like Mad Max, for instance.
Yep.
Is heavily referenced, and so is Radioactive Dreams as well.
You can tell when just by playing the game, like just the landscapes and stuff. Yeah,
just look at it. I mean,
yep.
It's, and I know with Mad Max also, your main
protagonist.
Yeah, there you go. One of his main pieces of armor is pretty much the classic jacket from Mad Max. So, I mean, yeah, that was one of the little things, like I don't know if it's one of the starting pieces, but it's just the classic Mad Max jacket is featured there. But aside from that, I was actually watching a couple little videos too that showed a lot of the different Easter eggs, which I found kind of fascinating, because a lot of times, it's one of the things that a lot of games don't really do, unfortunately, is just put, little pop culture things, just little references to something in the game, just because not everybody catches them, and it's one of those neat little experiences that you can kind of like talk to your friends about, hey, did you come across whatever it is?
Yeah, or like, hey, guess what I found in this game? And then you tell them all
Right.
about it, and they're like, oh my god, where did you find that? Well, you have
Exactly.
to go here and kill this enemy with your fist, and then you have to go to this vault and then complete this mission this way. It's interesting some of the loops or the hoops, I should say, that they make you jump through in order to find some of these too. But some of them are relatively easy. I mean, you basically took the time to put all these in here, so if you want to go over them real quick, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first one, well, one of them, they're not in any kind of order. It's just the way that a lot of the videos showed them. These are kind of how they're putting them through. I kind of was just listing them, but
Okay.
there's a Jack Nicholson Joker reference actually, where in the Old Town map, if you will, one of the enemies occasionally will kind of use the quote, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" which is one of his
Oh man.
more famous quotes.
Yeah, buddy.
There's a Godzilla as well. Apparently, that
This is a
when you're
Godzilla reference, really?
yeah, when you're they actually, I was watching a video of you as you're strolling through. There's just a gigantic fucking dinosaur footprint. I mean, I guess it could be any giant dinosaur footprint, but come on.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, 97. Well, while the game was being developed, I'm sure a few years before, so around 94, 95-ish. Was Jurassic Park, or was it just Godzilla, basically, was the big reptile at the time?
I mean, Godzilla was always kind of a big reptile, well, literally and figuratively a big reptile. But
Yeah, he's been huge in pop culture for many, many years now.
right. And it kind of fit, and they actually also had, which this one I kind of laughed at because it doesn't really fit with the rest of them, but there's a South Park reference as well.
Nice.
And I guess in the hub area, there's Officer Kenny, and if you kill him, up on the side there, a little text pops up that basically says, "Oh my God, you killed Kenny, you bastard." Which
Nice.
had to laugh about that.
Yeah, that's cool.
They have from the movie They Live, the quote that you hear fucking everywhere now, but I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum. You hear that at a point in the game. And the last one, which this kind of goes with the whole sci-fi sort of thing, you actually run into randomly in the wasteland, the TARDIS from Doctor Who will randomly materialize too. And they were showing footage of all these, and you just see them kind of strolling around through one of these big sort of desert areas, and the fucking blue phone booth just appears, sits there for a little while, spins off, and goes away.
That's crazy.
Right? It was different. It was different. Which I like that though. Little things like that. Again, if you and your buddies are playing this, and you come into, let's see, 97. I'd be 10 years old at that point. You go into school the next day or whatever and say, "Hey, did you guys see the whatever the hell it is, in Fallout?"
Yeah.
They may, it gives anybody, and even now, it kind of gives a big talking point, to just in general, like with your friends and with other people.
I mean, even the late 90s, though, I mean, gaming wasn't as big as it is today. But I mean, I'm sure if you were that into games, you had a group of people that you would typically hang out with and discuss these sort of things with. So definitely
True.
a conversation starter, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, personally, Fallout and just this genre of game in general, I never really got into.
Yeah.
I've tried many of the other Fallouts as well, and just a lot of the open world, like sort of like RPG-ish games like this, and I just can't get into them. Especially more so like the apocalyptic ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just because of everything being so barren. It really just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean the landscapes aren't really all that exciting. So unless you're into the whole like adventure discovery type of game, then it wouldn't really be all that fitting. I mean, I did play some of it myself, but my experience was quite limited. I mean, it came out at a time where wasn't playing a whole lot of PC games, and this was only available on PC and Mac. You know, it wasn't a console game until the most recent entries into the Fallout series. And like the only time I had to play it was more or less when I was quote unquote working at the time. Well, my aunt and uncle they owned a cash register shop, and they also owned a cell phone place, which is where I worked most of the time. You know, I was the holder of the fort, so to speak, and not a lot of people ever went into it because it wasn't like a Verizon or an AT&T store that they had, you know, bought into as like a franchise or whatever. It was very small, unknown type of cell phone service. So I had a lot of alone time. One of the discs that we had from, I don't know when, my uncle had many businesses in that building, but one of them was a Fallout disc. I popped it in one day, started playing. So I had the ability to look around and get used to the game, and you know, it was something to do. Is it something that I made myself play all the time? No.
But it was available.
Yeah, it was available. I liked playing games, so I played it.
I mean, when you were playing it at all, no, I mean, was there, I don't know if you ran into any problems or any issues with it, like, since I never I never really got into the game at all. I don't really know much, but I know you ran across, or at least looked into a little bit of issues too.
Well, yeah, I mean, didn't really run into any issues myself per se. Um, Other than sometimes the encounters just seemed like they were so one-sided, like it's you versus like 5 or 6 different scorpions, and they could, you know, surround you and make it so there was no escape, and then you just end up getting attacked several times in a row and end up dying. But as far as the research that we put into this episode, I did find a couple of interesting things. One being that Fallout almost never came to be. Interplay almost canceled their work on
Really?
Fallout. Yeah, well, evidently they came into the rights for Forgotten Realms and the Planescape Dungeons and Dragons franchises. So they were more interested in going that route, probably because they were already like an
Established.
established franchise. Yeah, but Tim Kaine, the mystical wizard that he is, you know, put the game engine together by himself in 6 months. He fought for Fallout, and he's the reason why they continued to work on the game, because he convinced them to allow him more time to work on his project. I mean, when you put in that much work on a game, and the company that you're
You
working for says, you know what, we just got the rights to these franchises, we're going to shift gears and work on those. I'm like, you're going to be kidding me. No way. I didn't waste 6 months of my time to build this game engine. We're putting this game out. You know, I would
I mean,
fight
it
for it too.
makes. I mean, in some ways, it makes sense for what they. I mean, granted, I'm kind of glad though that they didn't cancel it. But
Hmm.
you know, with having 2 established franchises already coming, you know, that you got access to. Plus, I think in general, to a lot of the general public, the whole fantasy like genre tends to be a little more appealing to people than Desolate Wasteland.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this type of game definitely would have been a harder sell as far as getting it out to the public and getting them interested in participating in this kind of game. Because, I mean, you're starting after a nuclear battle had gone by. I mean, there's nothing but fallout shelters that they call vaults that are around the planet, and not really a whole lot going on. as far as
I mean,
people.
you could, I mean, just even, putting it into like nowadays too, just look at side by side, just Fallout 4 and Skyrim.
Yeah.
What game, just by looking at, two scenes side by side, which game in some ways looks more appealing?
I'd say Skyrim myself.
I would say Skyrim as well. They're both this similar kind of open world exploration game,
Yeah.
but just having the gorgeous scenery and backdrops and everything from Skyrim is a hell of a lot better than desert.
Oh yeah, that, and I'm totally into like the whole dragons and shit like
Well,
that.
plus
So
most people, that's the thing, like you have a choice of, say, looking at mutants or fucking dragons.
yeah,
Dragons are a hell of a lot more impressive.
a mutant wasteland or a land that's full of dragons and interesting people.
Sold. Dragons. Done.
Another thing I discovered doing the research also is something I must give props to Interplay for, because they stepped in and corrected the issue. I mean, you can make games about, like Grand Theft Auto, and you're playing the antagonist, so to speak, and trying to kill people and whatnot. But there's a certain point where I think they should dial things back a little bit.
No.
Well, evidently, in the game, at one point, you're met with Sheriff Killian, and he wants you to go and take out this criminal named Gizmo. And if you went out and you killed Gizmo for Sheriff Killian, he would take the law, his law enforcement, way too far, to the point of tyranny. And he would be like a tyrannical ruler, and that would cause Junktown to stop building and just become stagnant. But if you then were to go and kill the sheriff for Gizmo, then Gizmo would take the time and make sure that Junktown would prosper. Of course, for his own benefit, but at that point, Junktown was at more better off if you were to kill the sheriff rather than killing the criminal. So, Interplay, they didn't like the moral ambiguity, so they actually changed it so that if you were to help Sheriff Killian kill Gizmo, it led to a more favorable outcome in the game. So it made people want to do the right thing more so than kill the sheriff and help out the criminal aspect.
So anarchy prevails, is what you're saying.
I guess. I guess.
I mean,
it was just rather interesting that I found that little tidbit
that
going through doing the research.
It's kind of amazing that before it got, the outcomes got changed, that it went to that, one extreme or the other.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, you help out the sheriff, and then he's like, "Oh, I told this guy to go do this thing. He did it. So I'm just going to tell everybody what to do, and they're going to do it my way." Which, of course,
they're dead.
Yeah, I mean, either people were upset by the fact that he's trying to just rule over everybody, and they rebel and maybe leave Junktown, or they refuse, and then, like you said, he kills them. I mean, it leads to a settlement that's not as far. It's not better off, and so to speak. I don't know. My grammar is not the best, and I apologize, but. I don't know. It's very good that they changed that.
Well, yeah.
At least I think so.
Or at least they dialed it back,
Yeah.
as opposed to just, all right, so you kill the criminal, you get a dictatorship, you kill the sheriff, anarchy wins, but yet the town prospers.
Yeah. Town's more prosperous because you decided to nix the sheriff instead of doing the right thing and kill the criminal.
Which, how the fuck that works,
Yeah, I don't know how they end up getting into the programming with the game, but
I,
whatever.
but I mean, aside from a couple little issues, I mean, from what I saw, the game got reviewed and everything fantastic across the board. I mean, I didn't
Yeah,
really see
more
any.
so retrospectively, um, but when it first came out, it did get some pretty good reviews as well.
I mean, Metacritic, it's got a review of or rating, I should say, of 89, which is exceptionally well.
Yep.
GamePro at the time had given it a 4.5 out of 5 star, and PC Gamer gave it a 90 out of 100. So I mean, it's got the reviews to back up. How, even though nowadays I don't think, obviously I don't think it translates nearly as well,
Hmm.
but that really shows though at the time how revolutionary and how good of a game it really was. I mean, in 97 and 98 actually, it won RPG of the year, games from GameSpot in 97 and Computer Gaming World in 98. So
Yep.
I mean, I don't know, when they're picking their RPGs and things like that, if it was strictly like PC or if it was across everything. It didn't really say. I mean, I'm assuming Computer Gaming World probably strictly did PC,
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine. I mean,
but
they're computer gaming.
right. But I mean, GameSpot, I would assume that would take in any RPGs.
Yeah.
So I mean, in 97, just in general, or just even in general, just for a new game, a new IP to come out, roaring out the gate and get rated so highly, and 2 years back to back get RPG of the year. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah, and looking back to just reviewing the little notes here, actually just looking off the Wikipedia page at this point, but over the years since its release, Fallout was ranked as 4th, 10th, 13th, 21st, and 7th best PC game of all time by PC Gamer.
Shit.
In 2001, it was the 4th. 2005 was the 10th. 2007 was the 13th. 2008, it was the 21st. And then in 2010, it jumped back up towards the top of the list, being the 7th best PC game of all time, ranked by PC
Huh.
Gamer. So it started off as the 4th, it dropped in the rankings, and then in 2010, when they did the list again, it went back up to being number 7. So it stood up to the test of time, that's for sure.
You want to know what I do find actually very interesting though?
That.
Um, well, on the whole GameSpot uh, RPG of the year,
Yeah.
it winning that. Um, I just looked up what other RPGs and everything were out at that point in the year, and that was the year Final Fantasy VII came out.
Really?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII came out in
Fallout beat
January of
Final
'97.
Fantasy VII for best
Yeah,
RPG of the year.
I mean, granted, from what Final Fantasy VII won a bunch of other awards as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I just found that kind of fascinating that given that, I mean, granted, it did win Game of the Year and everything like that, but you would think RPG of the year, I would have thought Final Fantasy versus Fallout.
Yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy VII, fantastic game. It's like one of the best RPGs I've ever played in my life, personally. But you also have to take into account that a lot of people compare Final Fantasy VII to other Final Fantasy games, and that's when they come out and say, well, that's the best Final Fantasy game ever, or that's the best game in the genre. I mean, they don't really include other games outside of the Final Fantasy universe for the most part. From what I understand in conversations that I've heard or been a part of. So, I mean, it is a little shocking that Final Fantasy VII didn't win Best RPG of the Year, but also It's pretty understandable. I mean, there's a lot of things that these other publication sites and magazines look at other
True.
than just how does this compare to other games in the series. I mean,
True.
being the first game in the series, especially for Fallout, wasn't
And
really
for
a
how
whole
good
lot
it
to compare it to, you know?
and for how good it got, how good Fallout got reviewed too. I mean, that alone, because the
Yeah.
thing is, Final Fantasy, for as good of a game as it is, it's already been established.
Yeah, the battle system was already there. It was just how Final Fantasy VII was presented in relation to other games that came for it previously.
Right.
That I think a lot of people really enjoyed because it took the elements that they already liked in the series and gave you 3D models for everything. I mean, 3D landscapes and shit like that. So I mean, it was great. I'll never
But,
forget that game. But we're talking about Fallout, so
but then, yeah, I mean, I think that could be partially what helped Fallout is that, for the first game in the series, it did that well. So, I mean, that alone says a lot.
yeah, you're right. Actually, I wasn't even thinking of that. Being the first game in the Fallout series and how well made it was for the type of game that they were shooting for and how well received it was. Yeah, I'm sure that definitely helped them make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, because I would say if I was sitting there looking, all right, it narrowed it down to, say, Final Fantasy VII and Fallout, you're looking at them side by side. All right, they're both rated about the same. They're both excellent games. Well, Final Fantasy has been out, it's the 7th iteration, so everything's established, and of course they're at the point of putting out excellent. They're finally tuning things at this point.
Yeah.
Fallout, on the other hand, this is the first one here, and they've already knocked this out of the park.
Yeah.
I would lean towards Fallout for an RPG game of the year on that solely, because a lot of the other stuff I would say canceled each other out because they're even in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then, being that it's the first IP, it was the first IP in that series.
Excuse me.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it is. They kept with it. Fallout 2 came out a few years later. I'm sure we may end up talking about that game here on the podcast.
I'm sure it's in one of the lists.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive it is. I was actually thinking about doing something a little bit different here tonight. Because I mean, I don't have anything else to go over as far as Fallout goes, but I was wondering if we could choose our next game right now.
Choose it live.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily have it set up to put on screen. I'm still kind of trying to figure that part out. But I will indeed pull up our random.org. That's how we do it all. Thank you very much, random.org. And also, I'd like to give a quick shout out to was it RXQ79? I found his playlist of him playing through this game, his Let's Play, and that's what I've been using here on the podcast, so people can see the game in action instead of just still framed images. Something else new I'm trying out here. So just a quick shout out to him and his videos there on YouTube. Thank you very much for the content, sir. But let's see. Random game sheet. So first we choose our decade. So 1 through 4, let's generate. Do we want to go back to the 90s again?
Hey, whatever it comes up, let it.
Okay, let's stick to the true fashion. All right, so our random generator chose the 90s for us again. This time we'll be covering number 46 on the list, which
and that is
Duke Nukem 3D.
Ooh.
We got some research to do on that, Bad Larry.
I have some fond memories of that game.
I have played a bit of Duke Nukem myself, so next week should be very interesting. Oh my god. Duke Nukem. I'm so glad we got that game. That's gonna be fun.
This is going to be a good episode because I've got some. There's some things that I remember about that game.
Oh yeah. Some of those strip clubs and stuff that they had in it.
Yep.
And just some of the humor. Oh my god, this is gonna be so much fun next week. But that's all I got on Fallout though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to do it for this week. Thanks to anybody who's tuning in live or listening on Podbean or iTunes. Please be sure to give us a review and feel free to send any feedback or questions or anything over to GameCastContinuum@gmail.com.
Yeah, check out our pages as well. I mean, I stream. I'm kind of taking a little break right now. I'm going to be adjusting my schedule, but we both have Twitch pages. You can twitch.tv slash DC Skater Shane or Mr. Bojangles 1984. You can catch us over there from time to time. You can throw us a follow. Same thing here on the GCC account. Follow us here so you know when the podcast is going live. You can find each one of us on Twitter as well. DC Skater Shane and Mr. Bojangles 1984. You can follow the both of us. You can follow GC Continuum over there. We both tweet about the podcast, as we're doing research on the games and stuff like that. So if you want to keep up to date, follow all the necessary channels.
Check it out.
Yes, for sure.
But real quick, just thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another great episode of GameCast Continuum.
Thanks for listening and watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope you had a good time.